You're making a fool of yourself and of this family. Her voice sliced through the conversation like shattered glass. My wife's words rang out loud enough to hush the entire dining room. Her cheeks were flushed, her hand trembled as she gripped her wine glass tightly. The look in her eyes wasn't just disappointment, it was revulsion. Everyone turned their attention to me. Her brother, Thomas, leaned back in his chair, smugness creeping across his face like it had been waiting all night for this exact moment. He thrived on these opportunities, chances to tear into me. Typical, he scoffed under his breath, shaking his head. A few awkward chuckles slipped from the mouths of guests who quickly looked down at their plates, pretending they hadn't heard. I didn't respond. What could I say? The truth sat like a stone in my throat, heavy, unspoken, and dangerous. If I let it out, it would ruin everything. This evening wasn't supposed to implode like this. We'd planned a warm gathering, a reunion after months apart. Friends, family, my wife, and me, back together. But now, I sat among them like an outsider. Unwelcome. Unworthy. Dinner carried on in strained silence. The scraping of silverware against porcelain was the only conversation anyone dared to have. My wife refused to meet my eyes. Thomas smirked at every bite, his satisfaction barely concealed. I had to remind myself to keep breathing. Then we heard the door creak open. Heels clicked briskly across the marble floor, their sharp rhythm echoing down the hall. A woman stepped into view, her posture rigid, her uniform immaculate, adorned with polished metals that glinted under the chandelier's light. Her expression was composed until she spotted me. Her steps halted. Her eyes widened. "Lieutenant Commander Harper," she said, voice clear, steady, and edged with disbelief. She straightened, heels clicking together. Then she saluted. "Sir." The room froze. You could hear the silence breathing. Thomas paled instantly. His smug grin vanished. His wife looked caught between a wave and a freeze, her hand suspended mid-air, unsure of how to react. My wife's fingers clinked faintly against her glass, she was shaking. "At ease, Captain," I said gently. That's when it started. Whispers. Side glances. The questions that had quietly lurked in my wife's mind now erupted to the surface. She'd never asked what I was really doing during those long absences. She'd filled the silence with assumptions, and most of them had been cruel. But this wasn't the time to explain. Not yet. Captain Sloane, Thomas's wife, took her seat slowly. The atmosphere shifted. The tension hadn't disappeared, but something new had crept in, uncertainty. No one seemed to know how to move forward, least of all my wife. Her words from earlier still hung in the air like poison that hadn't been swallowed. Thomas recovered first. "Didn't know the military started recruiting just anyone these days," he said, sneering again. "Even screw-ups." Sloane's fork clattered to her plate. "With all due respect, Thomas," she said coolly, "you should stop talking." She didn't raise her voice, but her words landed like a punch. He sank back, lips pressed tightly together, ego clearly bruised. My wife didn't speak. Her eyes stayed locked on me, narrowing. The fractures between us had existed for a while, subtle at first, but now splitting wide open like shattered glass. She wanted answers. She deserved them. But I wasn't sure I could give them. Dinner continued, but it was robotic: cut, chew, swallow, repeat. My mind drifted to the past. Those months away had been brutal. Operations buried under layers of secrecy. Missions that left no room for comfort or clarity. I'd seen things I couldn't talk about. Done things that couldn't be undone. But none of that mattered in this room. What mattered was the lie I'd allowed to grow. After the plates were cleared and guests began to leave, my wife quietly pulled me aside. Her expression was composed, but I could see the fury hidden beneath her calm. "Why did she call you sir?" she asked, her voice tight. "What are you keeping from me?" I sighed. You never asked. I'm asking now. The missions were classified. I couldn't tell you. She laughed bitterly. No, you just chose not to. You let me think you were wasting your life while I carried everything alone. She was right. I hadn't corrected her. I let her believe the worst of me. Over time, she'd written her own story, and I'd done nothing to stop her. But that wasn't the worst of it. I thought staying silent would protect you, I said. Her voice cracked. Protect me from what? The truth. Or was it because I wasn't yours anymore? That hit like a strike to the chest. I found the messages, she said quietly. On your secure phone. The ones from Sloan. I closed my eyes. The lines had blurred, between duty, between pain, between loneliness and connection. Captain Sloan and I had become something more than comrades. Something we shouldn't have. We'd crossed boundaries under the weight of war, and now the fallout was crashing into my home. My wife's hands were clenched at her sides. But she wasn't crying. Not anymore. I didn't know how to make it right, I whispered. You didn't even try, she replied. We stood there, unmoving, both caught in the wreckage of what used to be us. Dinner was done. The family had made their judgments. The roles had all been played, the loyal soldier, the failed husband, the betrayed woman, the smug brother. Captain Sloan appeared again in the doorway, hesitant. I'll leave you two alone, she said, her voice strained, her gaze lingering for a moment before turning away. My wife's eyes followed her, then returned to mine. I loved you, she said softly. Even when I thought you were worthless, I still loved you. But I think you left long before I stopped trying. I didn't argue. There was no excuse. The connection with Sloan wasn't just physical, it was emotional. It was forged in places my wife could never go. It didn't justify anything. But it explained the unraveling that had quietly begun long ago. I don't know how to come back from this, I confessed. Maybe you're not supposed to, she answered. The evening ended not with shouting or shattered dishes, but with quiet. The kind of silence that says more than anger ever could. We were two strangers now, held together by memories that neither of us wanted to touch anymore. As I stepped outside and glanced back, I saw Thomas by the window. He wasn't smirking anymore. The look on his face had changed, less contempt, more recognition. He understood now, perhaps for the first time, that not all battles are fought in war zones. Some are fought in dining rooms, around polished tables, inside hearts too worn down to care anymore. And some wars are already lost, long before the first shot is ever fired.